Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to all the participants in the past paper solution sessions. So the past paper, as we already well aware that the syllabus has been changed since 2024. May June of 2024 was the first attempt as per our new syllabus, and October November 2024 was the second attempt as per the new syllabus. So your exam series, which is May June 2025, is going to be the third attempt, which is according to the new syllabus. So I have planned the past paper sessions to enhance your understanding about the way you are supposed to attempt the paper, to share the tactics, which usually has been followed by the examiners to prepare the questions, to share the tips, how you can score better. So before proceeding, let's discuss about something about uh, checking criteria. Like as far as the checking criteria is concerned, so what are the particular areas where we are going to be marked? So the paper that we are going to solve in today's session is May June 2021, Variant 1, Paper 1 Reading. The structure, we are all well aware that we would be handed over with the two things for the reading paper. One would be the insert, which will look like this, as you can see on my screen. The second thing that will be handed over to you in your examination hall will be the question paper, which will look like this. So before proceeding, let me take this opportunity to discuss the particular way which has been considered to mark the candidates' scripts. And the candidates' scripts are usually marked by following the generic marking principles. So first we are going to understand that what are the generic principles. Let me clarify that these generic principles are not made by me. They are not being made by any other teacher. They are the principle which has been issued directly by the paper setters, right? So the general marking principles are supposed to be applied by all the examiners, the checkers, when they are marking the candidates' answers. As a checker, we have a very strict instruction from the Cambridge side that we are going to apply all of these six principles to mark your paper number one. No other particular strategy would be followed, right? So the first generic principle is that the marks must be awarded in line with number one, the specific content of the mark scheme or the generic level description for the question. Number two, the specific skills defined by the mark scheme or in the generic level descriptors for the question. Number three, the standard of the response required by the candidate as exemplified by the standardizations script. So here the examiner is basically instructing us that when we are marking the exam paper, certain basic rules which are called generic marking principles must be followed to ensure the fairness and consistency. First, marks must be given according to what is being stated in the mark scheme or the level descriptor. This includes both the content and the skills which are being tested, as well as the standard shown in the sample answers used during the training. Secondly, the whole mark are supposed to be given generic marking, which is being stated in generic marking principle 2. Marks awarded are always the whole marks, not half marks or the other fractions. So that means that only whole number marking scheme is going to be followed. There is no concept of allocating half mark. Like for example, if a question is of 1 mark, so as a checker, I cannot award you 0.5 or 1 upon 2 or 1 upon 4 of it, right? Third generic marking principle says that the marks must be awarded positively. Here, the examiner says that the marks are awarded for the correct or valid answers as defined in the mark scheme. However, credit is given for the valid answers which go beyond the scope of the syllabus and the mark scheme, referring to your team leader as appropriate. Second part of this principle states that the marks are awarded when candidates clearly demonstrate what they know and can do. Third part of this principle is that the marks are not deducted for errors. Fourth part of it is that the marks are not deducted for the omissions. Fifth part says that the answers should only be judged on the quality of spelling, punctuation, and grammar when these features are specifically assessed by the question as indicated by the mark scheme. The meaning, however, should be unbiased. Right. Okay, so here as a checker, I have been directed to follow a positive way to award marks to the candidates. That there is no giving credit for what the student has done correctly, sorry, in a wrong way, even if the your answer is beyond the syllable, and not taking away marks for the mistakes or the things which has been left out. In simple words, to enhance your understanding is that as a checker, I have no right to deduct your marks if in case you have provided the answer in chunks, right? As a checker, I have no particular right to deduct your marks if in case you have made any sort of grammatical error or a spelling error until unless it is not being clarified in the question. If in case the answer that you have produced is not matching the criteria of what is being stated in the mark scheme, which is usually issued by the paper setter, but the content of your answer seems correct to me, what will I do as a checker? I will approach to my leader, right? I will discuss your answer with the leader, and if my leader thinks that my concern is valid, that if I want to award the marks, so he will allow me to award you the marks. In simple words, as we already know that the paper setter set up the mark scheme side by side when they make the paper. So usually for making a marking scheme, all the teachers, the strategies that we follow as a teacher is that we just write the general part of the content which we are going to assess in your reading paper. But there is no particular room of understanding or no particular restriction that only that part is a line on the stone. If in case you have come up with any other idea in your answer and it is making sense, but that idea that you have produced is not being mentioned in the marking scheme. But as a checker, to me, I feel like that this idea is also correct if I make an understanding with based on what is being written in the text and what is being asked in the question. Your answer seems appropriate to me. So as a checker, I cannot directly award you the marks until unless I am not going to take the prior permission of my leader. Usually, we checkers sit in a team wherever we are checking your papers, right? And there are three persons who supervise us. So if in case we encounter such issues, so what we usually do that we take that query to that supervisor, the team leader, and we discuss in detail with the leader. And if leader thinks that whatever we are saying is also valid, so leader usually allow us, okay, award the mark if this thing is not being mentioned in the marking scheme, but the student has made a correct reference or has dragged out the correct information or the idea. So yes, the student, the candidate must be awarded marks. Right? This is what the overall sum of this marking principle is. Generic marking principle number 4 states that the rules must be applied consistently. For example, in situation where candidate have not followed instructions or in application of the generic level descriptor. In simple word, this principle says that the rules should be applied the same way for all the candidates, especially when they don't follow instruction or they follow the instruction. Like as a checker, I have no particular room of favoritism, right? As a checker, I have no particular room to uh, cater the people, the candidates that I know. I have to be, I have to remain neutral while checking, and I have to make sure that the rule that I have followed to mark the script of candidate A, I'm going to follow the same rule to mark the script of candidate D or candidate C or whatsoever the number of the candidate I have been allocated to mark. Right? Generic principle number 5 says that marks should be awarded using the full range of the marks defined in the mark scheme for the question. However, the use of full mark range may be limited according to the quality of the candidate response seen. This principle encourages checker to use the full range of the marks which has been allocated in the question, depending totally on the quality of the answer that you have produced. Right? For example, if in a question you have been asked to provide the explanation, right? Usually for the reading paper we receive this sort of question as well. Explain, comma, explain by using your own word, which is, and this text is written in the bold. As a candidate, you have explained, but your explanation contains a lot of words from the original text, right? So that means that you have not followed the instructions properly. So I'm not going to, as a checker, I'm not going to award you the full marks. I will award you 1 mark, right? The last principle says that the marks awarded are based solely on the requirements as defined in the mark schemes. Marks should not be awarded with the great thresholds or the great descriptions in mind, right? Which basically means that this principle is reminding us that marking should only follow what is being written, what is being directed by using the mark scheme, and should not be influenced by the grade boundaries or the performance level. So, all of these principles basically help us to maintain consistency, objectivity, and the fairness in the assessment process. So, in simple word, most of the time, candidates ask for the reading paper if we are not writing the sentence in the proper sentence structure. If we are not, sorry, if we are not composing our answer by using a proper sentence structure, so would that be acceptable? Yes. If your response is giving a clear understanding, you have made yourself clear, so yes, it would be acceptable. If in case for the question that asks you to give two details, you have just written the answer in the chunks, would that be acceptable? Yes, it would be acceptable until unless it is providing a very clear understanding for a checker that what you want to say as a candidate, right? If in case the explanation question is required, which is of 2 mark, and you have been allocated with the 4 lines, so is it really necessary to fill up all of those 4 lines? No, it's not necessary at all. If you feel like that you can provide the explanation in a very well and organized way by using one simple sentence structure, so yes, you can provide explanation. And if the explanation is correct, so yes, as a checker, I will be awarding you the full mark. Most of the time, candidates also discuss this query that is there any room where we can make sure or the Cambridge provide a surety that we can get the full marks in the English language paper, right? As because our younger grades, we have been made up with this particular sort of mindset that you cannot achieve the full marks in the theoretical paper, like in Islamiyat, like in English, or like in Urdu, or in any other languages. So yeah, this mindset is totally biased. It's totally wrong. Until unless you have not produced a particular accurate piece of response, I, as a checker, have no particular authority, have no particular right to deduct your marks. For example, if question number 1 of paper 1 is of 16 marks, right, and you have provided all the answers correctly, so that means that yes, you can get 16 out of 16. And in the same way, if you have provided all the correct answers for the rest of the questions of paper number 1, so yes, you will be awarded with the full marks. You can get 50 out of 15 paper 1. You can get 50 out of 50 in paper 2 as well. This thing is not only I am saying, this thing is being stated by the examiner here very explicitly. Plus, this thing is also evident in the what you can usually say exemplar candidate responses. All right. So these are the basic mark schemes that we are going to follow while we are working with our paper one, text A. I use the term descriptors. What are the descriptors? Let me show you the sample of descriptors. This is basically the mark scheme of P1 variant 1. For our question number 2, we usually receive this sort of table, because question number 2 is basically testing both of your reading and the writing skills. There are 10 mark allocated for the reading and 10 mark allocated for the writing. So this is basically the allocation of the mark. You can see the description. So all of these points are the descriptor, right? For example, the summary that you have produced, it has a wide range of the relevant ideas, and the ideas are very skillfully selected and used. So that means your response is meeting the requirement of level 5. You can either get 9 or you can get 10. If in case you have done one slightest error which is hindering the readability, so that means you are laying at the closer level of the beginning of level 5. So I will give you 9 out of 10. If in case there is not a single error in it, all the particular ideas, information that you have selected from the text are very accurate, and even you have used them in your piece of summary on a very quiet way, on a very good way. So yes, I am going to award you 10 out of 10, right? This is what the descriptors are. Similarly, we have the separate descriptors for the writing, that you can see on my screen. So these descriptors I'm going to provide you as a handout as well. So you can keep in your mind if there is any particular confusion, so you can discuss with me. I will explain it side by side. So let's proceed towards writing, towards the session. We are going to solve the variant one of our paper one, right? For paper one, the structure is quite we all are well aware with the structure. We will receive two text A, from where we have to attempt question number 1 and question number 2, right? Text B, from where we have to attempt question number 3 part A and question number 3 part B, right? This is your question paper. At this place, you are going to fill up your name, right? Here you are going to write your center number, and here you are going to write your candidate number. Both of these numbers would be mentioned on your statement of entries, most commonly known as SOEs. And then you don't have to write anything on this front page. It contains few instructions which include that answers all the questions. Use a black or a dark blue pen. Write your name, center number, and the candidate number in the boxes at the top of the page. Write your answer to each question in the space provided. Do not use an erasable pen or correction fluid, which means the usage of the eradicator, the Vito, is totally prohibited. Do not write on any barcodes. Dictionaries are not allowed, right? You can see your question paper like this, right? From October November exam series, what they have done, that they have put few mark pointers over here. Basically, the way your papers are going to be checked is a bit different. As a checker, I will not receive your paper in a physical state. I will receive it in a soft copy form, right? This is basically the unique barcode which remain unique for each and every candidate script. And through these barcodes, your informations have been installed in the system. As a checker, when I will receive your paper, so I will not be able to access to this front page. This front page would be hidden from me, right? I will receive your paper from here and onward. One thing that I would like to discuss over here is that what usually candidates do. For example, for this question that you can see that you have been provided with 2 lines. You started to write down your answer, but all of a sudden you made a mistake. What you did, that you cut it down and then you restarted. But when you restarted, so the space is quite very less for you. So now you are going to use this place to write down your answer. Acceptable. It is acceptable unless it is not looking messy, right? As a candidate, you need to make sure that you are not going to write beyond this line. As I have mentioned earlier, that in the old practices till May, June 2024, they did not include any sort of pointer on the question paper. But from October, November onwards, they have added the pointers, the black sign, which basically indicates that this area would be scanned, right? So that means if you have written anything on the left hand side borders or the right hand side borders or at the bottom or at the top of the borders of the page, so that text of yours is not going to be scanned. If it is not going to be scanned, so it is not going to be reached to me as a checker, so I would not be able to mark it. All of your efforts would be wasted. So these are the particular sort of instructions that as a candidate you must have in your mind. So yes, let's proceed with our session. We are going to attempt question number one, sorry, paper number one, reading of English O levels, double 123, and we're going to start with text A. Text A is a not sure. Then you can see the text which is written in 2 lines and it is italicized. This is basically the prior description of the text. Usually the text which has been selected by the examiner for your paper number one, they are either the part of a longer novel or a narrative. So sometimes it becomes a bit difficult for the candidate to understand the text because they have no particular idea of the book from where the text is being taken and what exactly is happening before this text initiated. So what examiner do that they provide a short introduction and they use italicized structure for it, right? This introduction has nothing to do with your passage. No question is being organized from this introduction, but this introduction plays a crucial role for your understanding, right? So text A, the not sure. The writer is attempting to navigate his way alone in a canoe across northern Canada's mainland Arctic. At this point in this story, he's traveling the length of a huge lake. So that means here the examiner has given us a particular setting that where this text has taken place and what the author of this text is doing, right? Paragraph number one. Disappearingly, I swung my paddle again into the icy water. The fierce wind driving me towards the land. I had to find somewhere to make camp. The gusts were growing too strong to continue. So here the narrator is basically paddling through the icy water, struggling against a fierce wind that is pushing him towards the land. He is physically very exhausted and realizes that he can no longer continue. Here his main concern is only to find a suitable, safe place where he could set up a camp because the weather was becoming very terrible and the conditions are worsening as making the making it impossible for him to travel. Right? Paragraph number two. Ahead on the North Shore, the one I would been faintly tracing in my canoe for my inhospitable kilometers, I thought I spotted a tiny patch of grass between the vast heaps of ancient boulders and the rocks that lay scattered inland, blasted by the frosts of 100 million winters. They would not permit a tent to be pitched, and with the Arctic winds, no tent could last long unanchored. A dried strip of grass was perhaps not what most people would consider an attractive campsite, but to me, just now, it looked inviting. I headed for it. So the narrator basically spots a potential campsite, which was basically a small patch of the grass located on the north shore of the lake, which he has been following for a very long and a difficult distance. The land where he is standing is harsh and very rocky, which seems like that it has been shaped by the millions of the winters, and this shape make it very difficult to set up a tent. Despite all of these uninviting appearance, even with the grass patch, the narrator thinks, or as a reader, we may it may look like a perfect place for him to give shelter his desperate situation. This shows that how survival shifts one's perceptions of what is considered attractive or suitable, which means the spot that he has spotted was not looking very suitable to place a tent, but somehow he thought that if I'm going to, this is the only place where I can place a tent. Otherwise, again, I have to walk very far further to in order to search for the place. Paragraph number 3. When at last I came to the grass aimed the rocks, I made camp, pegging down my tent securely with extra guy lines. Then I carried up my canoe, worn, battered, almost paper thin from months of grinding against the rock and ice floes, and overturned it beside the tent. Just a little longer, my old friend, I whispered to the vessel. So here, upon reaching the spot, the narrator sets up his tent very carefully using some sort of extra support to make it sure to withstand with the Arctic wind. He then brings his canoe, which has been damaged from the months of the use, uh, being out of the water, and places it beside his tent. He speaks it affectionately, calling to his old friend, which shows the emotional bond he has formed with the canoe, his only companion and means of transportation. Right? Now, the thing is, what is canoe? I, as a candidate, I have encountered that this word is being used very frequently here. Let me find it out where it was here. Yes, canoe. So, as a candidate, for example, while I'm sitting in the paper, so I get myself confused. Okay, what is a canoe? I have never heard this term ever before, right? So now, what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to carry any sort of dictionary with me. Even if you request the invigilator to tell you the meaning, so even the invigilator will not tell you that what does it mean. So what you are going to do in this particular situation, you are going to make a reference. The reference will give you a prediction that what the meaning would be, right? So the reference that you can make over here is that here it says that out of the water, right? Worn, battered, almost paper thin from months of grinding against the rocks and the ice floes, and overturned it beside the tent. So this means that canoe is a sort of thing that the author is using to travel in the lake, right? So we can say that it's a sort of a small boat. So in this way, I've cleared my confusion that what the canoe is. Now I have got the proper understanding the condition of the canoe as well. It's worn, battered, and it has almost become paper because the narrator has been traveling through it for a very long time. Thin from the months of grinding almost rocks and the ice flows. Here, I have somehow understood one particular concept of hyperbole. Hyperbole is particular the technique which is used by the author where they want to exaggerate over the things. So the phrase which is being used that thin from the months of grinding against the rocks. So technically, it's not like that the writer has been traveling since months. It seems like not a factual thing. So that means that here the author is exaggerating on it, exaggerating to tell you as a reader that the narrator has been traveling for a very long time and through a very harsh conditions. That is why the condition of the canoe is not good, right? I sat in the tent listening to the wind's howling grow louder as it whipped up waves and sent them smashing into the barren shore. Across the lake's turbulent water rose a range of gracefully sloped mountains, their lower flanks a brilliant orange. A flock of snow geese passed high overhead, emphasizing the emptiness of the landscape. I hid in my sleeping bag, hunkering down for the night. I was thankful to have found this spot among the rocks when I did. So, here, as soon as the narrator had set up the tent and he stepped inside the tent, the narrator listens to the intensifying wind and the waves which were crashing onto the shore, as it was a lake. So the narrator observed the surrounding landscape as well, which was surrounded by the mountains with glowing orange sides and a flock of geese which was flying overhead. This reminds the narrator of how isolated the place is. So the natural element here emphasized the wilderness and the solitude. The narrator hides in the sleeping bag, and the narrator was very grateful to have found a shelter in the time. Right? Paragraph number 5. I heard of kenosis being windbound on such shores, stuck for weeks. It was not an encouraging possibility. Ahead of me lay powerful river rapids. Unlucky travelers had been known to get into the trouble there. If my journey was delayed, I would have to navigate them lately in the season, when the weather was at its worst. That night, the wind blew ceaselessly, shaking my little tent as I lay huddled inside. I pinned my hopes of escape on the morning calm. The narrator here trying to reflect on the stories he had been hearing from the other canoeist. Canoeist is basically the person who travel through the canoe or has a command to how to travel through the canoe, who had getting stuck for the weeks because of the bad weather. This is a real concern for the narrator at this time, especially because the dangerous rivers rapidly lie ahead on his route. So, if the narrator is going to delay his next step, so he might have to cross the river even in the worst weather. So, this paragraphs end with hymns where he developed the hopes that the winds will come by the morning, even though the wind continues to batter his tent. That means that the winds were quite very intensified, right? Paragraph number 6. But the dawn brought no respite. The skies were grey and dismal, the gales as unrelenting as ever. All day I waited anxiously for a break in the wind that would enable me to launch my canoe and leave my camp. None came. The frigid, sorry, the frigid gusts seemed only to grow stronger, wailing eerily across the lifeless landscape. A second night passed with me still stranded in the same spot. Growing more anxious, I watched as yet another day slipped away without any break in the wind and the waves, making paddling impossible and trapping me on that desolate gray rock Strian Point. So the narrator took the rest for a day, and as soon as the next day arrives, as the narrator was expecting that the weather might get better, but the day is no better. The gray skies and the strong winds were still there to welcome the narrator. Here, he waits for the whole entire day for a break in the weather so that he could leave. But unfortunately, he did not get any suitable opportunity to leave the place. Now the situation become more distressing as the second night passes, and yet another day ends with no improvement. The narrator is stuck, the narrator is frustrated and in getting very anxious, getting very worried because he is being trapped on the cold, a lifeless landscape. Paragraph number 7. Glance at any satellite image of the northern Canada, and you will see that there are 3 million lakes, creeks, ponds, and rivers. With that, many different waterways, the number of potential route combination is infinite. You could live 1,000 lifetimes and not even begin to scratch the surface of paddling all the possibilities. Here, the narrator provides a broader context about the northern Canada's geography. The narrator mentions that the vast number of the lakes, rivers, even the waterways, which is 3 million in total, with so many waters route available, exploring all the possibilities would take countless lifetimes. This information basically emphasizes both the beauty and the overwhelming challenge of navigating such a region. Let's move forward. Paragraph number 8. To devise the most efficient route I could before leaving home, I had studied the satellite maps in detail, looking at what at first glance appeared to be an incomprehensible labyrinth, a puzzle of lakes and ponds. I realized it could be deliciously challenging not to confuse one bay or inland or any of the thousands of the others. My ability to transfer a two-dimensional map image into a real three-dimensional plan in my head was exactly what I needed now. Paddling out from the coast was not an option. I concluded that to make any progress that day, I would have to carry my canoe wading through the nightmarish string of obstacles at the long, pathless edge of the water. So, here, in order to prepare for his journey, the narrator had carefully tried to study satellite images and the map. The narrator found the layout of the certain terrain, which was confusing at first, with its countless bays and inland. But the narrator enjoyed this challenge and used his skills to convert the flat map into a mental three-dimensional route. Like he was able to uh, imagine all the ways in his mind. Now, due to the wind, the narrator also realizes that he cannot paddle out and must carry his canoe along the rough shoreline instead, a physically demanding and a risky alternative. Which means that if he want to escape from that particular place, so he should not put his boat in the water and he should not paddle. Rather than what he has to do, that he has to carry the boat in his by using his physical abilities, and he has to walk side by side to the lake. Paragraph number 9. Roaring, swirling, foaming water, pulling back and forth on my boots made holding onto the canoe with struggling to maintain my balance almost impossible. I banged my shin hard against the concealed rock, trying to get out of the rushing torrent back to the safer ground. Well, I said to the canoe, that's going to leave a mark. Eventually, I reached at the end of the North Shore and lay down near a willow thicket, my body aching from the labors of the day, my legs swollen, and myself utterly spent. So, as the narrator attempts to carry his canoe while wading through the water, he or she faces a great physical challenges. The water was rough, which makes it difficult to maintain the balance. The narrator even get injured his shin on a hidden rock. The narrator initiated a conversation with the only thing that he had, his best buddy, the canoe, a bit of the humor, but also shows the narrator's fatigue. After this exhausting effort, the narrator finally reaches a thickest and collapses, injured and completely worn out. Last paragraph, paragraph number 10. I awoke next morning to a surreal haze hanging over the land. At first, I thought it might be fog, but then realized that it was something else. Strange cries pierced the silence. Young gulls along the nameless lake at which I would arrived. The haze had a faint smell of smoke about it, telling me that somewhere far off the south, in the land of the trees, there must be forest fires. The haze cleared to reveal a fairy tale landscape. Vivid green hills, jumbles of boulders beyond counting scattered about, and the little streams crashing a path down the craggy hillsides. Behind me rose towering great grey cliffs of rocks, old as time, the oldest rock on the planet, so cracked with fault lines as to give the suggestion of ancient crumbling castle ruins. Drifting into this timeless world, I could picture dinosaurs roaming about in the rocks that were eons older, even those giant reptiles. More and more, it seemed like a land time forgot. As soon as the narrator reached at one particular spot, due to the pain of traveling, he laid down and he slept. And the next morning, as he or she wakes up, the narrator found a strange haze. Initially, the narrator mistakes it for the fog, but later the narrator realizes that it's a smoke which was coming from the distant forest fire. So, despite the eerie atmosphere, the scene transforms into the stunning and almost the magical landscape. The presence of the green hills, the countless boulders, tumbling streams, and the towering cliffs were a sense of calmness, provided him the particular room to relax, but they look quite very old. Even the ancient rocks that has been mentioned here in this paragraphs, they appear like crumbling castles, which evokes a sense of timelessness. So the narrator imagines prehistoric creatures at this ancient land, and the narrator felt that if the narrator entered a forgotten world which had been untouched by a very long time. So this is what the text is. And so far, we have consumed 22 minutes to read and explanation of the text. So, yes, reading the text is quite very recommended. Until unless you have not read the whole entire text, you would not be able to understand its proper gist and you will not be able to attempt the questions wisely. So, yes, that is why reading is recommended. spend 15 to 20 minutes to understand like what is being stated in the text, and then in order to make your understanding more clear, you can make your notes at the provided site, or you can use a pencil to make your notes over the paragraphs. Remember, you are going to hand it over the insert to the invigilator as well. This insert would also be the part of your examination script, right? So if as a checker I receive your insert which contains the notes, so I will get the understanding that you as a candidate is well prepared and has explored the text in a very good way. You have been an avid reader, right? If in case you find yourself competent enough to read paragraph wise or the line wise, or and then to proceed with the questioning, so yes, you can feel free to do it. But make sure, keep this thing in your mind as well, that although the line number has been mentioned, but it's really never like that the answer or the idea has already been discussed in the same exact line. The presence of this line number is just a hint that here you can find your answer, but it is not really like that the answer is being written explicitly. Maybe the idea might have been introduced either before to the line which is being mentioned or after the line which is being mentioned in the question, right? But if in case you encounter any sort of question which is being organized according to the paragraph, for example, our question number 1 part A, it is it's stated that in paragraph number 1. So yes, if you have read paragraph number 1 and you feel like that you have understood it on a very well way, so you can proceed towards answering the question side by side. In this way, you will be able to save your time. Let me mention that this paper 1 is of 2 hours. So technically, you are supposed to uh, spend 50 minutes for text A and 50 minutes for text B. Try to keep 20 minutes extra for the reviewing process, right? But if in case you are applying this particular sort of a strategy that you are reading the text side by side and you are answering the questions side by side, so in this way you would be able to save your time as well, right? So let's proceed with answering the questions. Question number 1, part A says that in paragraph number 1, give one reason why it was difficult for the writer to paddle his canoe in the icy water. This question is of 1 mark. Now, the thing is how you are going to answer it. You are supposed to go back to the paragraph number 1 and you are supposed to identify that what particular conditions had been there which make paddling very difficult, right? So let's go back to paragraph number 1. Here is the paragraph number 1. Uh, if I encounter at this particular phrase that the fierce wind driving me towards the land, this is a clue which is making me to understand that the wind was basically running in the opposite direction. That is why it was difficult for him to travel, right? So let's confirm if this question is correct or not. So there is no particular other guideline has been mentioned or the information has been mentioned in the text. I find it somewhere to make camp. The gusts were growing too strong to continue. Yes, again, this is the reference here. The gusts were becoming too strong. So this is again aligning with the wind. So that means that the prediction that I have made as a candidate, that because of the heavy wind, it was very difficult for the author to move. Now, let's proceed towards writing the answer. Now, the question that most of the candidates ask, that if the question is asking us to provide one reason, can we start our answer with because? Yes, you can start your answer with because, but in the paper, in the exam, you need to give your best. So don't go with the shortcuts. Try to go with the proper sentence structure. Maybe the particular fragment of the sentence or the chunk or the phrase that you think can provide a clear answer may not be a clear phrase to give the answer. It can be a correct one to you accordingly because you are under the pressure of the exam. but the checker is basically not in the pressure of checking. So as a checker, we pay a lot of attention on what you have written. So try to follow the proper sentence structure to form your answer. So I'm allocating you 2 minutes to answer this question. You can answer this question on the provided sheets. Okay, so here I have composed my answer here. The presence of strong winds which pushed the narrator towards the land. The sentence is providing a very clear understanding of what I wanted to say. In this way, you are supposed to give your answer, right? Now, moving on to the next question. Part B says that using your own words, explain what the text means, faintly tracing. Line number 4. Here they have given Here they have given the reference of line number 4. One thing that you need to pay attention here, you can clearly see using your own words. It is being written in bold. Give one. It is written in bold. The bold wording is basically the directions, the instructions which has been directed to you by the paper setter. So that means that your answer should be according to those directions, right? This question is giving you the direction that you are supposed to use the wording of your own. So that means that lifting from the original text is not allowed. If you have picked up the specific lines same exactly from the original text and you have copied them down here, so your answer would not be acceptable. If in case you have copied few words from the text but most of the words of the explanation are of your own, so yes, your answer is acceptable. Okay, so this question is of 2 marker. How to answer this question? That the first thing that you need to keep in focus is that this is a vocabulary question. Faintly tracing, they have just the examiner is just talking about the usage of one particular phrase, right? So that means ke you are not going to go into the whole entire text. The simple strategy that you can do is to replace both of these words with the simple synonyms, right? Now think for a while that what can be the simple synonym of faintly and what can be the simple synonym of tracing, right? So as far as the word faintly is concerned, right? So we can say that faintly tracing, that means slightest, right? Or somewhat. Let me write down here. Slightest. Right? Okay. The second word is tracing. Now let's think about a synonym of tracing. Tracing is basically when we basically trace with the pencil a copy of drawing, map, or the design made by tracing, right? So if we talk about this, the particular synonym for it, so the most common or the very closer in meaning is to find when we are tracing. So basically, we are finding something, or to track down, or to detect, right? So you can say that for tracing, the simple synonym is find, right? So in this way, I have so far, first and foremost thing that I have done is that I have rephrased the term which is being given in the question for my understanding that when I'm going to proceed towards writing the answer, I'm not going to use uh, the same exact wording which has been utilized over here in the question. So this question is from line number 4. So let's go back to the insert line number 4. At the right hand side, you can see the line number. This is line number 5 and this is line number 4. Faintly tracing. Yes, here is the line. Faintly tracing. Okay, as far as these sort of vocabulary questions are concerned, so in order to answer these questions or these questions, you just don't need to rely on the particular area where this phrase or the word is being used. You have to focus the whole entire sentence. You have to read the sentence where this word is being used. Ahead on the North Shore, the one I would been faintly tracing in my canoe for many inhospitable kilometers, I thought I spotted a tiny patch of the grass between the vast heaps of the ancient boulders and the rocks that lay scattered inland. Right? This is a whole entire uh, sentence where this word has been used, right? So here the faintly is giving a very closer sense of weak, right? And tracing is basically giving you a very closer sense of tracking. That means that the narrator had been roaming all around and he came across with one particular patch which looked like quite very weak. That's why he thought that it is not even a good idea to place a tent over here. The tent can fall down at any time, right? And then tracing is basically to track. So now you have to answer by using in your own wording. So let's proceed with writing the answer for this question. I'm giving you 2 minutes. You can record your answer here. Okay, so here I have composed the answer of my own that the narrator was following the shoreline in a way that was barely noticeable, that was slightly traceable, that was uh, barely witnessable, right? So in this way, we are going to construct an effective answer for these sort of question. If you want to provide or if you want to add uh, the details in a detailed way, so yes, you can add. Okay, let's proceed to our question number 1, part C. And the part C says that from paragraph number 2, identify one feature. One is being bolded. That means okay, this is an instruction of the North Shore that made it difficult to find a place to camp there. Explain the reason why this feature made it difficult to camp. This question is of 2 mark, and as we can clearly see that the examiner has provided the separate space. Here the examiner has written feature, so that means the feature that we are going to pick up We are going to write it down here, and the explanation would be in between these lines, right? So, in order to answer this question, first and the foremost thing which is required here is that we need to find a feature, and the strong feature would be the physical one, right? Because the North Shore is the physical landscape, right? So let's go back to paragraph number 2 and let's find the feature. Uh, Paragraph number 2 states that ahead, okay, I have read the one sentence, so I will be continuing with the other one. Blasted by the frost of 100 million winters, they would not permit a tent to be pitched. And with that Arctic winds, no tent could last long unanchored. The dried strip of the grass was perhaps not what most people would consider an attractive campsite, but to me, just now, it looked inviting. I hated for it. This is basically the explanation which made him comfortable to choose only the place. So that means no particular feature is being discussed over here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this text. Ahead on the North Shore, the one I would be faintly tracing my canoe for many inhospitable kilometers. I thought I spotted a tiny patch of the grass, the vast heaps. Yes, here I got the clue. The vast heaps, the vast heaps of the ancient boulders and the rocks. Hmm. And the rocks. The whole entire phrase. This is basically the phrase which can be a feature, right? So in the feature, we can clearly state that the place where the author was standing, it contained huge boulders and the rocks, right? So let's write the feature over here. Either you want to write in a proper sentence structure, so you can write it, or if you just want to point out the physical feature and you would just want to write it in a form of a phrase, so you can write it. In both of the way, the answer for this feature part would be acceptable. So I am going to use the phrase structure huge and huge boulder and rocks. This is what the feature was. Now, explanation is going to be in your own wording, right? So that means that you need to make a connection that how it is going to be the thing, how this feature is going to be a source of difficulty, right? That means that here you need to make a connection. So the presence of the vast heap is basically indicating that the land was not smooth. It was an uneven, right? And then the additional details that has been provided here, the rocks. So that means that the surface core was quite very hard. So if the surface is hard, so that means that you cannot place your tent, because in order to place a tent, you have to dig up in the surface. So let's add this thing in the explanation. So in this way, I have composed my answer that the uneven and the hard surface made it difficult to set up the tent. The feature is providing a very clear answer, and even the sentence here I have followed the simple sentence structure. So yes, it is providing all the clear meaning. So that means yes, it would be acceptable. I can get 2 out of 2. Then paragraph number 3. Sorry, question number D. From paragraph number 3, give 2 things that the writer did to guard against the effect of the wind. two things. Two is the instruction. This is an explicit question. Yes, for the explicit question, you are allowed to lift the text, but still, I would recommend do not lift the whole entire text. Show some sort of your understanding as well. So, from paragraph number 3, we are going to pick up the details which expresses that these were the two particular steps that were taken by the author to make sure that the tent that he has placed is quite very strong. So when at last I came to the grass aimed the rock, I made the camp, pegging down my tent securely with the extra guy line, the one detail that I can use over here. Right. Let me highlight it. Securely with extra guy lines. That means that he uh, used some sort of extra rope to provide the support to his tent. Right. Then I carried up my canoe, worn, battered, almost paper thin from the months of the grinding against the rocks and the ice floes, and overturned it beside the tent. Right? That means that internally, uh, he provide the support of the tent by using the canoe. The in simple words, to make your understanding more clear, that he did two things. First was outside of the camp, where he applied extra piece of ropes, and then inside the camp, where he placed his canoe, his small boat that he or she has been using, to provide the support from the inside. So let's proceed towards writing the answer. Okay, so yes, in this way, I have noted down both of the reasons here by using a proper sentence structure. The narrator secured the tent with the extra guidelines. The narrator placed the canoe beside the tent to shield it or to provide a support to it. Right? Let's proceed to our next part, which is question number 1, part E. Explain what the writer was thinking when he whispered, "Just a little longer, my old friend." Line 13. So let's go back to the line 13. As far as what I can recall from my memory is that this part is particularly from where he was holding his canoe and he was talking to it, because the only companion that he had was the boat that he or she had, the boat that he or she had been carrying. The reason why I'm continuously using the word narrator or he or she, because so far in the whole entire text, we have not got any particular idea that either the narrator was a male or a female. But the physical strength that has been expressed by the narrator over here, it's giving a clear understanding to make a prediction that these physical strengths usually possessed by the male. So yes, if you use the word he in your answers, so it would be acceptable. But if you think that your usage of the pronoun may cause a harm for you, so try to go with the neutral gender. Say the word narrator or the writer, right? Okay, so the question was just a little longer, and I forgot the line number. Line number 13. Yes, this is line number 15, 12, and 13. Here it is, just a little longer. Here is the line. Just, oh. This is the line. Just a little longer. My old friend, I whispered to the vessel. So the question says that what do you think the narrator has been thinking over here? So try to imagine this scenario in your mind. The narrator is basically fixing the camp, right? And then the narrator is holding the boat and then placing it. The narrator has already been exhausted from the way he had been traveling through. So that means that he is gathering up his strength and he is having some sort of difficulty to place it, but he is encouraging internally to place it and to make it more secure, right? So this is basically a sort of emotional tone, and the usage of the word, the phrase "my old friend" is basically giving us the guideline to understand that the narration has a the narrator had a very strong bond with the the canoe. So that means that the narrator is speaking to the canoe as a companion who had been of a who had been a great support, right? So for the answer, we can say that the narrator was hoping that the boat that he's holding would stay intact and survive the rest of the journey, right? So let me write it down here. Yes, so the narrator was basically hoping that the canoe would stay intact with the tent. Let's proceed with the last questions, which is basically not the last, the three last question F, G, and H. Question number one, part F. In paragraph number 4, how did the writer feel about the weather condition as he sat in his tent that evening? Give two details from the text to support your answer. So that means here you have to talk about one particular feeling and you are supposed to provide two evidence to make sure that the feeling that you have pointed out is correct. Now, the things to consider when you receive such sort of question, so make sure that the feeling that you are concluding must have two particular evidences in the text. Sometimes the particular language which is used by the authors is quite very tricky. Uh, for example, by looking one particular sentence, you make a prediction that the writer was worried, but the paragraph has no sufficient details to support that the author was worried. So that means that your prediction is wrong. If in case there is only one particular detail in the paragraph which expresses that the narrator was worried or the writer was worried, so you better not to say that the writer was worried because you would not be able to fulfill the focus of the question. You're supposed to provide two details. So predict the feeling which has the particular tendency or the sufficient detail in the text to support your answer. Okay, so we are supposed to read the paragraph number 4 again. In paragraph number 4, this is the basically the paragraph number 4. So in paragraph number 4, we basically discussed that as soon as the narrator stepped inside the tent, so he or she was listening to the intensifying wind and the waves which are crashing onto the shore. So the narrator basically observed the surrounding landscapes as well. And, there were mountains with a glowing orange side, and a flock of geese was flying overhead. This basically reminded the narrator of that how isolated this piece of land is. So the presence of the natural element is basically emphasizing the wilderness and the loneliness of that particular thing or the space, right? So the feeling that we can predict over here is that he was feeling lonely, right? But if in case I say that he was feeling feeling lonely. So I have to make sure that there are two particular details to support my answer, right? So if I say that the narrator was feeling lonely, so there are no sufficient detail to support that he was lonely, right? So if I pay attention over here that across the lake turbulent water, a range of gracefully sloped mountain smashing into the barren shore. By keeping this in the consideration of this evidence, if I connect my thoughts with the particular way the narrator had been facing, is that the narrator is basically traveling for a very long time in the very harsh conditions. Now finally the narrator has spotted one particular piece of land where the narrator could set up the tent. So that means that the narrator is relaxed for a while, but narrator is worried about the next step that he has to take. And if I say that the narrator was worried, so yes, there are two particular details which are mentioned in the text that can help me to fulfill the focus of the question. If I say that the narrator was worried, right? So basically, the way the winds was howling and the waves were crashing the shore, right? This could be the detail. Another understanding that I can make by considering the phenomena as soon as the narrator stepped inside the tent. As soon as the narrator stepped inside the tent, the narrator was bit relieved. So let's see that if there are two particular details that make sure that he or she was relieved. Yes, the narrator was basically thankful that he had found a place to the camp, but there is no other second detail of it. So that means I'm not going to say that the narrator was feeling relieved. I'm just going to say that the narrator was feeling worried, right? Okay, so if I just write over here worried, so yes, it would be accepted. Or if I use any other synonym of worried like anxious, so yes, it would be accepted. And the two details that are here to support my answer is I can say that the wind was howling, right? And the other one, um, the crashing of the waves. So I can say that the waves crashed, not crashed, smashed is the smashed. Yes, smashed would be a wiser choice of the word. Smashed to the shore. So both of these details is basically giving me an understanding that why he was worried. He was worried that what could have been his or her next move. The narrator was worried that how or what particular strategy that a narrator should follow to make a secure landing or a secure spot. Right now, moving further, question number one, part G. It has two parts. The scenario is being given that during the night the writer realized that during the night the writer realized that he might have a particular problem getting past the powerful river rapids. Line number 21. And the question is that what was the problem? Number two, what did he want to do to avoid the problem? So if we go back to line number 21, so I would heard the canoes being windbound on the such shores stuck for weeks. It was an encouraging possibility. Ahead of me lay a powerful rapid. Unluckily, travelers had been known to get into trouble here. The intensity of the river and the bad weather was basically the problem, right? This is what I can infer from here. So I can say that mm, the weather was worse, the unpredictable weather, or I can say the bad conditions of weather. Now, the next part of this question is that what he want to do to avoid the problem. If I go back to the paragraph and read the rest of the details, a flock of this, sorry, what? was a line number? It was line number 21. Yes, this was a paragraph. Yes. If my journey was delayed, I would have to navigate them late in the season when the weather was at its worst. The night, the wind blew ceaselessly, shaking my little tent as I huddled inside. I pinned my hopes for the escape on the morning calm. So that means that the next step that he wanted to take, that how securely he is going to travel further, right? Or I can say that the narrator wanted the wind to get calm so that he could leave early, right? Let me write the answer. Yes, in this way, I have provided a clear answer to wait for the wind to calm down so that the narrator would continue the journey. One thing that you can see over here is that I have started this sentence by using a small letter and this sentence by using the small letter as well, that I did deliberately. If in case you are going to do the same mistakes, would that be counted? No, that would not be counted because you are being judged, you are being assessed on the basis of your reading skills, not your grammatical skills, right? Now, the last part of the question number one, which is basically based on the character's feeling, and we are supposed to provide the evidence to support each and every feeling from the whole entire text. So the question says that explain using your own words the writer's different feelings about the place where he decided. Now we got the clarity that the writer was a male, where he decided to make a camp. Give three details from anywhere to support your answer. So far, we have read the whole entire text, so I guess we can clearly conclude it, that what particular sort of feelings and then the writer had uh, when he particularly found what we can say, the place to support the tent, to place the tent. So the first feeling that is quite witnessable from the text is that he was feeling relief, right? And it is quite very evident in the phrase that it looks inviting. Where it is, it looks inviting. So the usage of this phrase is basically providing a sense for the understanding that as soon as writer realized that he has found this the particular place, so he felt a bit of relief, right? So let's write it side by side. This question is basically supposed to be written separately, right? Like, for example, one feeling, one evidence. This is going to be the format. So the format that you are going to follow: feeling plus evidence. That means that you're going to answer by using three different sentences, and each part of the sentence is going to be under this structure. First part of the sentence, you can talk about the feeling, and in the second part of the sentence, you can talk about the evidence. If in case you want to make two separate sentences to emphasize on the one feeling, so what you can say, what you can do is to compose your answer in two straight lines, right? Provide the feeling, but make sure to provide the evidence. So that means that in order to answer this question, you are supposed to provide three feelings and the three appropriate evidences. So the first feeling that I have concluded by looking at the term that it looked inviting is basically the sense of relief. So I can say that he felt relief uh, because he had found a space to rest, right? Okay, now second particular sort of feeling that I am supposed to take it out. I'm sorry for the repetition of the word. Okay, if I go back to the text, and there was a phrase used over here that was in my mind, basically thankful to have found this spot. It looked in, let me see, where is it? Hmm. Yes, here it is. Luckily, this sort of search and find option is not available in your uh, paper. Yes, at the ending of paragraph number 4, I was thankful to have found this spot among the rocks when I did. So the feeling is clearly mentioned that he was thankful, right? And the evidence is that he has found a shelter from the wind, right? So if you want to rephrase the word thankful, so you can say that he felt gratitude, or he was very grateful. He was very grateful to have a spot, right? Then the last feeling that I need to talk about. Okay, I forgot to mention the evidence here. Spot, sheltered uh, from the wind. Okay, the last feeling that I am supposed to take out is from the text. Uh, if we go to the ending where he was basically woken up on the next day, so there was a phrase like something here was also a feeling. Uh, it was here somewhere. Fairy tale landscape, vivid green hills, fairy tale landscape, jumbles of the boulders. So this is basically giving a sense that he was getting very amazed. He has been exhausted through the journey, but and he felt, and he even felt so, but he woke up, so he was quite very astonished to see the particular things which were quite in front of his side. So I can say that he was amazed uh, by the beautiful. The place basically seemed like that there had been no particular inhabitant, so we can say that untouched surroundings, right? So in this way you are supposed to attempt your question number 1. Let's proceed towards question number 2. Question number 2, as we already know, that it is basically based on the use of the language, and under this umbrella of the language we basically have to talk about the usage of the effective language, the literary art, literary devices, or any particular technique which has been used by the author to create a particular sort of effect. We would be asked to point out the effect. We may be asked to point out the impression. So let me just quickly give you an overview view, like what is the basic difference between an effect and an impression. As far as the term an effect is concerned, so an effect is basically the outcome of what you feel, right? And as far as the term is concerned, so an impression is basically what you feel, right? For example, you receive a text from your bank that $1 million has been credited to your account, so you feel happy, right? This is what the impression is. What will you do after receiving this message? You will throw a party to for your friends. This is basically the effect, because you are feeling happy, right? So let's proceed. Question number 2, part A. Read this extract from the text. Uh, You could live 1,000 lifetimes and not even begin to scratch the surface of the paddling all the possibilities. Line 35 and 36. What does the writer want to suggest to us how he feels about paddling in the northern Canada? So this is basically taken from line number 35 to 36. Let's go back here. Let's point out line number 35 to 36. Yes, here it is. So here, basically, the author is talking about the particular way the author is facing the challenges. So this is about the phrase that 1,000 lifetimes. So that means exaggeration is being done. So that means it's a most difficult task. The question says that what the writer want to suggest to us about what he feels. So we are basically going to compare two phrases. The most efficient implies efforts and the importance, right? So we can say that sorry, not the most efficient and implies effort. I spoke wrong things. It's not about the efficient thing. We are basically just going to focus on the phrase the 1,000 lifetime. So here, basically, he sees it as a huge, mysterious, and full of adventures, right? The particular land which is being talked about, the North Shore, right? So, yes. Okay, so as our main focus has been the particular phrase of 1,000 lifetimes. So here the author is basically exaggerating that in order to explore the whole entire piece of this land, you need to spend a lot of time. So that means that there had been a lot of things to discover over there, right? Let's move on further with the part B. Explain why the writer uses the phrase most efficient rather than the word efficient in the expression to devise the most efficient route I could. So, first and the foremost thing that you have to do to attempt this question is that you are supposed to compare these two phrases, most efficient and the efficient. Efficient is just a simple adjective. Most efficient is the superlative degree of the adjective, right? So when we add on with the superlative degree of the adjective, so that means we are talking about something which is quite very superior, right? So here he basically wanted to have the best route to avoid any sort of difficult option. So that's why author has used the word most efficient. So in order to provide an explanation for this one marker question, we can say that he wanted the best possible route out of many difficult options. right? Okay, next part C. What to impression does the writer want to convey to the reader in the sentence? Look at what at first glance appeared to be an incomprehensible labyrinth, a puzzle of the lakes and the ponds. I realized it could be deliciously challenging not to confuse any bay or inland for any of the thousands of the others. So the first impression, which is quite very evident over here, is a challenge, and the other one is excitement, right? Like looking at the first glance appear to be an incomprehensible. So that means it's excitement, right? A puzzle of lakes and the ponds. I realize it could be deliciously challenging. So here the challenge is being explicitly mentioned, right? So I can say that the first impression that has been pointed out over here is challenging, and the other one is excited, right? So, in order to write the sentence, I can say that the place was confusing at the beginning, and it seems that it was very hard to navigate, but he found it exciting and mentally stimulating, right? Let me write down the answer here as well. So, in this way, we are going to compose an effective answer for this part that the place was confusing and hard to navigate. One thing that I forgot to mention over here is the usage of the word labyrinth, right? So as far as this word is concerned, so labyrinth is basically sort of a complicated thing, right? A particular passage which is quite very difficult to understand, a particular route which seems quite very easy, but it is basically quite very challenging, right? Okay, part D. Read this sentence from the text: roaring, swirling, foaming, water pulling back and forth on my boots, made holding onto the canoe while struggling to maintain my balance. Almost impossible. What effect the writer want to suggest about the water by using the words roaring, swirling, foaming? So the focus of this question is basically is are these three words: roaring, swirling, and foaming. So here the author is basically talking, or you can say that focusing on the sound which is being created by the water, roaring, the sound, swirl, the movement which is being made by the water, and foam, which is reflecting the danger, right? So here the writer wanted to show that the water was quite very loud, it was quite very violent, and was very difficult to stand, which creates a danger and chaotic environment, right? So you may record your answers. I am just going to go to the next and the last question, which is part A. Okay, for this sort of question, you will be given with a piece of text from the original text, and you are supposed to identify the example where the author has used the language effectively to the one particular stance. Similarly, it has been structured in the same way. Identify one example of how writer uses language effectively to convey his feelings as the morning haze clears in this extract from the text. Explain the impression the writer creates in the example you have identified. Example and explanation are supposed to be provided separately. There may be only one example in the provided text, or there may be more than one example. So far, with the exam series that has already taken place, we have got this particular development uh, a sort of understanding that the particular text that examiner usually give for this part of the question contains so many examples of the effective usage of the language. There is a possibility that author might have used some sort of, you can what you can say, the literary devices like simile, metaphor, hyperbole, onomatopoeia, alliteration, or even by using the words or the sentences structure. So what you are going to do, that you are going to provide one example and then you are going to provide the best or what you can say, the particular explanation. For example, if I just look at these words, vivid green hills, jumbles of the boulders beyond countless scattered about, and the little stream crashing. So these are basically the usage of the imagery. So in the example, I'm going to write down these words, and in the explanation, I'm going to explain what the imagery is and how it is being applied, right? This is how we are supposed to attempt our question number one, part A and part B. And by the end of it, we would have scored 25 marks if we are going to keep the particular guideline that I have discussed over here in your mind. Now, let's move to the next part of the question, that is section B. And section B is basically from text B. So let's see what the text B says. The text B is basically plugging. So what the plugging is, it is being described over here. So let's read the text. Ever been on a run through the woods and noticed litter spoiling the otherwise natural scenery? Not only unpleasant to look at, it's a reminder of how careless and inconsiderable people can be. Then there is a bigger problem, the deadly effect of the rubbish on the ecosystem as well as on the innocent wildlife. Environmental companions argue that the solution to the waste epidemic requires multi-pronged efforts, including reviews of existing laws, but we can all help, even on our routine jogs, by plugging. Plugging is simply picking up litter while jogging, and it started in Scandinavia. The word came from plocka up, which means pick up in Swedish, and jogging. This fitness trend is riding in popularity globally. Picking up stray pieces of the rubbish here and there may not seem enough to make an impact, but community actions groups plugging together regularly in an area can make a noticeable difference. Small efforts really can add up to tackle a massive problem. However, for others, the problem began much earlier. Much of the litter we see is a stuff we don't even think as of litter. To start with, explains environmental campaigner Anna Rose, who feel business, who feels business and their customers have a bigger part to play. Our consumption habits are the problem. There are ways to improve the situation that don't involve accepting someone else to use their free time to pick up your mess. By collecting abandoned takeaways, cups, and the plastic bottles isn't an activity confined to the joggers. The rise in outdoor swimming over past few years is having a knock-on effect on the amount of the litter bagged and bent from our riverbanks and shores. The Outdoor Swimming Society even includes a call to collect rubbish in and out of the water in its most recent swimming guide. Dr. Damien Gee, doctor, author, and a keen outdoor swimmer, recommends plugging if only because of the proven benefits in the nature. Research has confirmed what we learned as kids: going outside in nature makes you feel good, Dr. Gee says. In Japan, they call it forest bathing. Time in nature improves heart rate, blood pressure, and even our immune functioning. A particular fascinating argument for the plugging isn't that such an activity is a part of a human nature from a medical standpoint, plugging, and how about plucking, which would be walking and picking up litter, naturally emulates human body machines. Our prehistoric ancestors walked long distance and from time to time would bend over to pick up fruit. nuts and bugs from the ground to eat. Another good thing about blogging is that you can also do it as a family. Blogging teaches children the importance of looking after their local environment, although you need to keep an eye out of the sharp or the dangerous objects. You can clean anywhere, anytime. You can run a blogging group and get your whole community involved or join a cleanup in your local area. All of your cleaning actions counts, says the final year student Ravi, whose school is one of hundreds taking part in the school project. On one beach recently, students joined other volunteers, surfers, and the walkers to clear 1 tons of the debris left behind by the seaside sunseekers. I first heard about the blogging about a year ago. Eco-minded influencer who I follow online were making a sport out of their usual hikes, jogs and swims, and picking up the litter along the way, explains Ravi's teacher. It seemed such an effective fusion of exercise and environmental actions for our student. So the text has been quite very expressive, and the content of the text is quite very straightforward. There is no particular sort of confusion. So let's proceed with the writing down the summary. As far as the summary writing is concerned, so there are four particular steps that you are going to follow. First and the foremost is to read the question so that you can understand that what you are going to summarize. As with the arrival of this new syllabus, we are not supposed to summarize the whole entire text. We are supposed to summarize the part of the text. So let's follow the first step. First step says that summarize the benefits and attraction of the blogging according to text B. That means that we are going to talk about the appealing features, that why this particular concept of blogging is becoming very viral. The instructions which has been given are here in front of your screen. You are supposed to use a continuous writing, not in note form. That means that you are not going to make notes. If you are going to make notes, so it is not, you are not going to be given marks on it. But yes, it would be counted as a good gestures of you. Avoid copying long sections of the text, which means that lifting from the original text is totally prohibited, right? So in this way, we have completed first step, that we have read the question, and we have understood the focus of the question is. So the focus of the question is that we are going to talk about the particular attraction that the blogging has. The second part is that you are going to uh, read the text thoroughly, and you're going to highlight all the particular information which are aligning with the focus of the question. So far I have read the text, and the text is basically talking about the physical health benefits of this concept. It is also talking about the environmental impacts. It is also talking about that how this activity can affect on the community involvement. At the ending of the text, there was an importance of the educational value. Plus, moreover, it also says that the whole entire thing uh, is quite very impressive, that it can be easily followed, right? It's quite very feasible. So basically, the particular concept of blogging is basically, this term is taken away from the Swedish word, which means that when you are jogging, so you are picking up your trash. As we already know that with the particular rapid increase in the human population, we go to the public places. What we do, that we take so many things with us. Even if you are in a good mood to have a coffee, you go to the coffee shop, you buy the coffee, and you're on way to your work. You're having your coffee, and as soon as the coffee finishes, you just throw the cup on the way. So that means it's a trash. Somebody, technically or and morally, you are supposed to pick, but if the cup is going to be strained over there, so it's going to be not only a bad look, but it will be a destruction for the environment. So few people have come up this from phenomena, like if you go to the jogging on daily basis, so what you can just simply do, that wherever you are jogging, you can pick up the trash as well. So this particular activity basically involves bending down, which is also a part of the exercise, right? So in the second step, while you are reading the whole entire text, you would be highlighting all the particular information which are aligning very close to your question. As soon as you have completed your second step, your third step is going to start where you are supposed to organize your information. Organize your information means, for example, the first point is in your summary, you're going to talk about the health benefit. So that means that from the whole entire text, wherever the health benefit is being mentioned, you're going to combine all of those health benefits together. And when you're going to proceed towards the writing, so you're going to talk about all of those benefits first. Then you are going to talk about the environmental benefits, then how it is going to be an piece of advantage for your community. In this way, your organization issue would be resolved, right? So as far as the moral summary is concerned, so I can just quickly summarize it. Like I can say I can start my summary in a way that the plugging, the act of picking up the litter while jogging, is becoming increasingly popular due to its many advantages. It helps to clean the environment by reducing harmful rubbish that affects ecosystem and the wildlife. While it may seem like a small act, regular community plugging efforts lead to a noticeable empowerments in the public spaces. Sorry, not empowerments, improvement in the public places, I must say. It also promotes health and the well-being as spending time in the nature improves physical and the mental health. Plugging basically mimics natural body movements, which makes it beneficial from the fitness perspective. Families can participate together. In this way, they would be teaching children environmental responsibility in a very particular way. It's a flexible and can be done anywhere and anytime, whether alone or in a group. Many students and the volunteers join plugging drives, combining exercise with a meaningful contribution. This activity rises is also driven by the influencer who make it appealing through the social media. So in this way, I'm going to summarize my text. The whole entire summary, I'm not going to write the summary writing part. I'm going to assign to you. So you are going to summarize it by your own. But before proceeding towards writing the summary, let's discuss the part B of this question. Part B is basically a sort of intro, what you can say, interview question. Here they provide you the scenario, which is based on the text, and then they ask you to consider yourself as one of the character which has been discussed in the text, and then you are supposed to answer this question. This question is of basically 20 mark, sorry, 5 mark. So that means that you are going to take the idea from the text, or you are going to develop a similar opinion with any of the idea which has been mentioned in the text, and then you are going to add a proper explanation to this idea. If you feel like that you are unable to develop more than one idea, so please don't develop and do not mix it up. Just stick to one idea and enhance it or expand it clearly, right?